Hey. Welcome to episode 284 of Awkwardly Awesome Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Freeman. I probably didn't need to point to myself because I'm the only one here, so you would have just assumed I have eyelash in my eye. It's better now. Anyway, as I think about bringing on my guest today, I think about my parents and how they were determined that even though I had a disability, in my case, birth injury, which led to a speech impediment and coordination differences, they were determined I lived the best life I could, and that didn't just happen by chance. They both devoted so much time to making that happen, and I guess the image that comes to mind is I was slow, a very slow writer. Writing longhand took a long time, so my mom spent countless hours week after week taking dictation as I dictated assignments. And I mean, it can be a lot of work having a child that has unique gifts but also unique challenges. I'm very grateful, exceedingly grateful to my parents. There's many reasons you're listening to this podcast now, why it's been produced, but the initial one is because my parents gave me confidence to go out in the world and do what I do. So let me bring on our amazing guest, but first this.
Today's guest, Sarah Anthony.
Hey, Sarah Anthony, welcome to Awkwardly Awesome Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for being here. Should we jump right in?
I'm sorry?
Thanks for being here. Should we jump right in?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So one thing that really intrigues me about your story is even though you've lived your life in California, you managed somehow to defy the odds and grow up in small towns. And your parents were intentional about that. Will you please tell a little about why your father wanted to move to a small town?
I think that both my parents, my father was really focused on just the safety aspect, having young kids. But I think both of my parents really looked for the community aspect that small town living brought. Your neighbors, people. We rode our bikes across town. We would go up to the local shop, and they were all places and people that you encountered in every day, and we all knew each other. So it was familiarity and comfort.
Must have been a sense of safety then.
Definitely for my parents, as kids, we didn't know any different. And I joke all the time now that the stuff that we did back in the 80s would terrify me now as a parent. riding our bikes across town up to the lake and being out until dark and not having people, our parents know what we were doing all day long.
And you mentioned the lake. How far was the lake from town?
About 20 miles.
About what?
About 20 miles.
20 miles. And how old were you when you rode up there?
Oh gosh, 10, 12.
Imagine, I mean, a kid learns so much from having that degree of independence. Wow.
It's something that has really changed with our kids today is the amount of freedom that we had to make all sorts of crazy decisions.
So were you born? Is the first town you remember a small town, or were you born in a big city?
Well, I was born in Oakland, which was a big city. It's funny, at the time that I was born and the area that my parents lived in, the Bay Area, was still a small community where a lot of people knew each other. I can still mention a local restaurant now, and people that lived in the area knew it. But my first memories are of winters and the small town.
And when we discussed this, I can't remember what we came up with about how big is winter.
Um, right now, I don't know exactly. My guess is maybe over 10,000, a little over, but at the time, about two.
About 2,000.
Yeah.
And what was your experience like going to school in small towns?
Very familiar, very comfortable. We saw our teachers at the grocery store. My mom would arrange, she worked with our local Girl Scout troop, and it would arrange different activities. We had sleepovers at each other's houses. It was a very close knit group of families.
Oh, sounds really nice. Then you would go into the city to Berkeley, which is in San Francisco. Yeah, I don't know why I'm saying that, but Berkeley is in San Francisco by San Francisco. It's not in, it's across the bay. For anyone who's wanting to know a little geography trivia. But anyway, you would go into Berkeley to see your mom, your grandma and grandpa on your mom's side. And what was that experience like?
At that time, when I was, younger in age, they had moved up to Grass Valley, actually, and my grandpa built a home up there. But their whole friend group was from that area. And so anytime they had birthdays, anniversaries, parties, it was a get together with that community of people. And so it was really interesting. We talked a little bit about kind of the magic of being around people that had known each other almost their entire life and had stories going back to their teenage and young adult years.
Hmm. And you got to experience this when you were a kid in high school and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Whenever we would hang out with our parents or our grandparents and get together for any like special occasions.
So, side note, your grandpa was an architect, right?
Yeah.
What kinds of things did he design?
He worked on some of the bigger commercial buildings in Berkeley.
Wow, that's exciting. I love architecture, so it's neat knowing that. And then after high school, what made you choose to go to college?
I think at the time it really was just the thing that you did. I had the idea of success and career on my mind. I don't know exactly what, I don't think I could have pinpointed what professionalism meant, but it was some type of office job at that time, and college was just kind of the next thing to do and the way to get there.
How did you get curious about becoming a lawyer?
I think it started a little bit with a teacher in high school and our debate club, and my interest in exploring both sides of an argument or a conversation. And I kind of did everything backwards in college, where in my sophomore year, I accidentally took a class on constitutional law that was meant for upper division students that were in the poli sci major, and absolutely
In what?
loved it. I worked on a actual court case with one of my instructors afterwards, and it was just fascinating to me.
So you kind of first like you took that class in constitutional law and absolutely loved it.
I did, and then after that class, the instructor invited me to work on a. He was a change of venue expert, and he was working on a actual case outside of Placerville, that I was invited to participate in the research part of it.
Oh wow! So so from this, a dream is starting to form of going to law school. And did you know what kind of law you were interested in practicing?
I had no idea. No.
Ooh, so what happened next?
Out of college, it was very clear to me at the time that I needed to make some money, in order to afford and pay for it. And so I went to work, in a law office as a paralegal after that.
Did, did you enjoy every minute of being a paralegal?
I did not. It was terrible. I actually didn't enjoy it. The practical application of, the paperwork side of participating in the law is completely different than, arguing constitutional law. And so, all of the court filings and all of the deadlines and was not interesting to me at all.
So you did really enjoy debate, and you're like, oh, law is going to be kind of like that. But then you got into the paperwork, and you're like, ah.
Yeah, it is absolutely not that. It's still the area of law that the attorney that I worked for practiced in. The malpractice side of it was very interesting to me, and we would retain, um, professionals, doctors and lawyers that would offer their side of any malpractice information. And so interviewing those expert witnesses was interesting. But again, the dictation and the filings and stuff, not as much. The constant editing. And at the time, we had a typewriter and you had carbon copy. And so you made
Oh,
one mistake and you were starting all over again.
oh, that makes me immensely nervous just thinking about it.
Uh,
So what happened next? Did you just soldier through it and like this is going to be my career for the rest of my life?
No, I don't think that I was thinking that far in advance. It was the job that I had at the time. I had some other friends in the field that were doing other things at different offices, and kind of talking to them, my mind had started to wander into what other areas of the law, but I wasn't solidified, or different types of law practices that I could work for. I considered working at the courthouse as a clerk, those types of things. But I got pregnant with my son.
Before we go on to this next exciting chapter, what was what words of ideas would you give someone's who's searching for a career or thinking of changing a career?
It's so interesting. I've had this conversation a few times, and the idea of experiencing it. And there are a few technical careers out there. I think the world is a little bit different now with YouTube, where you can get a little bit more insight into the job. But my advice at the time would have been to try to experience whatever you can in as many different ways as you can, um, before you commit to something, to try to, know yourself, know the environment. And again, in those technical careers, it was really hard because you had to get the education and work towards that. And then you were already in it.
So rather than just assuming that a job sounds amazing, like actually see what it's like. I mean that makes sense. I've made a lot of assumptions in my life, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I wish I had done more research on
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's not how I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Oops. So you said you got pregnant. What was it like? What is that first moment like when you got to hold your son?
It's really hard to explain the connection and the emotion that you have. I remember clearly in the hospital not ever wanting to put him down,
Mm,
and the nurses being frustrated with me that I wouldn't set him in the bassinet.
mm.
Um, and every experience is unique, but I think the bond is fairly common, and interesting how it seems for mothers that it's almost instantaneous. We've had 9 months of a connection, but to have something that you are so completely responsible for and in love with is an experience that you can't describe any other way.
It sounds like an amazing experience. I'm a man, and I don't have kids, so I've never experienced that. But it sounds like an awesome experience. Just to clarify, is taking care of a child during the first year of your life, is that an easy thing to do?
It's exhausting. Everybody's tired. Everybody's, as you're developing routines, and everyone's trying to understand sleep patterns and food and what have you, and all children are different. Aiden was one since the moment he was born. He has had an issue with sleep. And I say, still to this day at 22, that it is something physiologically that is just a process that doesn't work for him. As far as regular
Oh,
routine and deep sleep, he really, really struggles with it. So that was something that we really had to get sorted out.
so how as a parent do you manage that first year? Like you're used to like a consistent sleep schedule, and suddenly that consistent sleep schedule is impossible. How do
Yeah,
you manage that?
I mean, I think that your body and your mind kind of go into a survival mode. It's not that extreme, but it's just you're doing what you can when you can. I made it a practice to sleep when he slept, and not everyone can do that. But that was the way that I could manage. I remember the first time being sick with him, and I make the joke now to this day to any friends that are wanting to start families, that everyone wants to talk about labor and delivery, and that's one day of your life. No one tells you about being sick with a sick kid. You're trying to care for another human being while you're throwing up and miserable.
Oh my gosh. That must be a very unique experience.
Yeah, yeah. It's something that it's hard to think about until you're in that moment. Most of us naturally have instincts to go into rest and recovery when we're not feeling well, or when you're responsible for somebody else, for their food, their cleaning, their care. It's really difficult.
Wow. Wow. I think about my mom and just feel gratitude as you say all this. Around the time Aden was 2, what did you begin to notice?
For Aiden and us, it actually started around 6 months, and he had what we believed at the time was seizure activity. And so we were kind of constantly in and out of hospital rooms, in addition to him not sleeping. And I think at the time I probably would have described him just as a fussy kid.
As a
Um,
what? Oh,
and at
fussy.
the, yeah, fussy kid. And at the age of 2, with him not really talking, I didn't know any of what came out to be, any of the flags or warning signs of autism, but being very involved with like the function of items rather than actually playing with toys. Um, those types of things were what led me to it. It was by chance and happenstance that his pediatrician was on vacation, and we had seen he had a cold, and we had seen the supporting doctor. And I asked them, I said, please, there's something with my child. I don't know what, but please help us. And he looked at me and he's like, can you hug him? I said, yes. Can you read him a book? Yes. Does he look at you? Yes. And he said, well, I'm going to tell you that you're going to hear a lot about autism right now. And that's absolutely not the case with him.
Mm.
And so the next step in that diagnostic process, because I was stating that there was something with him, was to refer us to an audiologist office. And so, again, it was rural small town. We had an appointment in about 45 minutes. We were at the audiologist office, and they had a little corner of chairs, and Aiden was crawling through underneath every single chair and was playing with one of the functions of the chair. And she walked out and she looked at him for a couple of minutes and watched him just underneath the chairs, and looked at me and says, oh, he has autism. So that was a complete shock to me.
Wow, she just laid it out there.
Yeah.
So before we go further, like as you described, taking care of any child, any any baby is extremely challenging. But then when you add something like seizures, what would you say to parents who have that additional thing that the child is dealing with, be it seizures or some other condition?
I think that it mainly probably just to continue to ask questions, and see different specialists when possible, if possible, for different information. It's being in a rural area, and especially at the time, different family systems and tend to offer a lot of feedback. I heard plenty for Aiden, that he is just a boy, he's young, wait until he's older. There's a lot of different rationale for some of the things that happen, or just kind of that's the way that it is. And it's hard when you're receiving the information to try to process it all, and then you have outside or family influences that will let them cry it out, and all the kind of old wives' tales on how to raise children, and it can be really confusing or overwhelming.
Mm.
But I think deep down, your child, so just continue to ask questions.
So suddenly your audiologist bless all this diagnosis. Did you know much about autism at the time?
I did not know anything about autism. To me, disability at the time was only a physical disability, was the only thing that I was aware of. I was um, really ignorant. At the time, Time magazine had just published its very first article about autism. It was the cover of Time magazine, but there was not a lot of information out there.
So 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 what do you do? Like your son has this thing you know how so little about. Like what steps do you take? Uh,
I started asking 1,000 questions of anybody and everybody that I could come in contact with. Um, and it was, we were referred to the regional center. We had our official diagnosis in September at the regional center.
what's a regional center for people who live in different states?
In California, it's our governmental body that is responsible for maximizing an individual's potential. We have qualifying diagnostic criteria. So under the DSM-5 now, you can qualify for regional center services, and they're the ones that help kind of disseminate different programs and funds for individuals with disabilities.
So after you were at the audiologist, you made an appointment at the regional center.
It was an intake line where you would call for a referral, and that's where they had their psychologist that would do the diagnostic testing to test for autism. So we went through an intake. We didn't wait very long. The wait lists these days can be incredibly long and arduous.
Oh my God. I mean, that must be really tough with a with a kid who doesn't want to wait.
Incredibly frustrating as you're waiting for much needed services and supports. Um, just waiting to hear back. Our system here in California is incredibly impacted.
How long had you at this point when Aden received the diagnosis? How long had you lived in the town you were living in?
For at least 3 years. For at least 3 years, it was all in a very small area in which I lived. So Chico State, where I went to college, was the furthest away. After I graduated Chico, I commuted to Sacramento for work, but lived in Williams. And so it's kind of all that small town area.
So did you feel like you knew some people and
I knew the town of Williams itself was very, very small. We knew everyone, and actually, Aden's dad's family was very well connected to everybody.
so Williams was like kind of like the community you had seen your grandparents enjoy when
Yes,
you were younger.
yes.
So then, how did you happen to have a mentor? I'm talking about the mentor who
Yeah,
had
Jesse.
a
Jesse, yeah.
challenging idea for you.
Jesse was a part of a parents group in Sacramento that advocated for early autism services for individuals. And one of the very first parents group in the North State that would fly in behaviors from Los Angeles when there were no services here. But I met her through a class at the Mind Institute that was being taught. There was a group of advocates that were going, and we kept talking about, we have this diagnosis, we have these services called ABA that everyone keeps talking about, but this is garbage. It's terrible. I was constantly complaining to the regional center. I don't understand. I don't understand. What is this? And so they told me, like, well, you really have to talk to Jessie. She is a bulldog.
Will you talk a little bit about the service, the ABA services?
Yeah, it was what was being called at the time as the only research based or evidence based program for autism treatment. We were in an outlying county, and one of my favorite explanations that Jesse gave me is when you talked about ABA services at the time, is that you can get a hamburger from McDonald's and you can get a hamburger from a steakhouse. And both of them have meat, both of them have a bun, both of them have lettuce, but they're just not created the same. And so that was my first introduction into the difference, even though there were agencies that were using the name ABA and that type of therapy, they weren't all clinically based, and they didn't offer the same type of intensive support. So our first introduction to it was about a year of not making any progress, a lot of behaviors and situations becoming worse, safety being an issue and a concern. Aden was not verbal at the time, and having a lot of problematic behavior.
What was it like for a parent, like the feeling of not making any progress?
I didn't know any better at the time, that it could be different. Once I did have an understanding of what the difference was in progress, it was like someone flipped a switch. It was night and day, but it was really overwhelming looking at, when Aden was first diagnosed. I had a lot of 3 clinicians at least tell me not to expect to potty train him. And that, this was sort of our life. And so you're looking at your young child trying to figure out how to help them, just access life. So at the time, communication was huge because he was not speaking, and would become very frustrated when he needed something, and I had no idea how to help him.
That sounds so like it was so stressful for both you and Aden.
Yeah, it's so the relief that I see. He was probably about 6 after he had spent quite some time in ABA therapy. Was the first time that he told me, "I love you, Mom," and I remember the feeling so clearly, just shock and astonishment, and I started crying on the playground. But to feel that connection with him, without having words, there were always hugs, there were always snuggles, and also, quite a few moments of frustration and overwhelm on both of our parts.
So Jessie had a suggestion for you.
She did. She asked me twice how I felt about moving, and the first time it was, I couldn't fathom it. I was young, a young parent. I had my home, I had my family, I had my friends, and she asked me. She was like, "Well, are you willing to move?" And I said, "I don't."
Move to where?
To Sacramento.
Wow.
So to move from our little bitty town of Williams, approximately an hour away, to a big city, a bigger city, and no one that I knew, no support network for myself or Aden. And I remember hanging up the phone thinking, she is crazy. What does she mean? People don't just move. And we ended up contacting her a year later after attempting ABA in our area, and becoming really, really frustrated with the process. And she asked me again, "Are you ready to move?" And I said yes.
What made you say yes the second time?
There was a few things that had happened in our life at the time. So one of the first things was I had divorced Aden's dad. So our life had changed that way. And I think I had become desperate for solutions. I became really focused on there had to be a different way to support Aden.
Hmm. In a dimension of the story that also interests me is you're a more introverted person, or you describe yourself as more introverted. What was it like for you personally moving to a big city?
You know, for me, it wasn't even the big city because I think that I'm pretty good at secluding myself. I can tuck in with, a good book, and it was different not having a network of people there, but also in the world of disability and disability services. You start inviting all sorts of people into your life that you may or may not want to have anything to do with. And so there's people constantly coming into your home. Um, you have, we had a 40-hour week schedule at the time for different occupational therapy, speech therapy, any type of recreation and ABA.
Did
And
you
so
say a 40?
four zero, yeah.
Wow. So like like your home's kind of your, or it is your space, and suddenly you're having all these people coming in and out.
Coming and going all the time. Yeah, noticing all of your dirty dishes, all of your unwashed laundry. Yeah.
So tell me about some of the milestones you experienced Aiden having in the years when you were in Sacramento.
The very first one was just language, and his connection to language, which brought him a connection to people. And so, as soon as he was developing language, he was always a kid where I'm introverted, but Aiden always wanted to invite everyone. He wanted to, every birthday, every activity, everyone was invited. So that's
Oh,
where he really started to develop his community. And it just every couple years we'd have a different change or a growth and expansion. One of them has been a social skills group that has been instrumental in our lives. That really is just an extension of a family system for him.
mm.
And it's just been really beautiful in how they navigate relationships.
I mean, it's interesting. Ian sounds like he's just wonderfully social, and so often when I think of people who experience autism, I think of people who 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 kind of want to keep the distance from other people. Would you please say a few words about the diversity of people's experiences with autism?
I was just talking with a friend the other day about, I absolutely appreciate the inclusion of disability in media, but it's so hard to capture every person's experience and how unique it is. And when you get into autism, just the different ways that the disability shows up for an individual. As a young child at 2, no one could sing Old MacDonald to Aiden. He would start throwing his hands around and doing whatever he could to get people to stop. Um,
So it was something about that particular song that he just didn't care for.
Yeah, I think there was something that I think deeply aggravated his senses. Um, and so, when you look at other individuals on the spectrum, maybe you'll hear a family member say music soothes them, or they can't get enough of, Old MacDonald or this one particular song. And so it is so different for each individual.
So for another family, they might be singing Old MacDonald like 100 times a day, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, um, so, where do I want to go from here? I wanted to be sure to ask you this question, and I usually don't read questions, but it's going to be dramatic if I can't find this question. This is awkward.
Is this the question that you texted me earlier?
Yeah.
So the question was about striking a balance.
Yeah. I'll read it off my phone. I intended to read a question, and I intended to do it in a very professional fashion, but it's not quite what happened. Okay. What do you think of the no? Okay. So many mothers, both of kids who experience disabilities and kids who don't have a challenge, striking a balance between attending to the needs of their growing kid and living their own life. How have you grappled with striking this balance?
I love that you asked me this question, Jason, because the very first thing I did when I read the text was call my friend on the phone and be like, "How do I answer this?" And I think
So you did phone a friend.
absolutely, I did. I'm like, help me talk this through. Um, you know, the need to be perfect at parenting and to have all the answers and to be able to do all the things that you need for your child is so overwhelming. And I think the simplest answer that I have is you do what you can. There's not a balance. I will never not be a mother, and so when I'm prioritizing Aiden's needs or prioritizing myself, it always is a tug of war or an argument within myself. And one of the things that I try to help ground myself in any decision is what am I demonstrating for him? I think I have really taken hold of that kids learn more through your actions than your words. And so everything that we're doing is modeling for them behavior. And I try to address openly and directly as much as I can of like, yeah, I had a bad moment. I was really not perfect in that moment. I made some mistakes. So if I was tired and grouchy and I told you I didn't want to do something and watch TV, I'm sorry, I was having, a bad time. And so I try as much as I can to relate just regular human experience. As much as I know that we should do things for others, it doesn't always happen, as much as I would love to always put his needs first, that's not going to be realistic in his life. And so I really try to offer him also, a lot of people that you're going to encounter in life are going to have their own needs and want to do their own things. And so it's not always going to be about you. And so really I try to focus on the conversation within myself first, and then the conversation that I'm having with him on how well I'm doing.
Nice, nice, nice. Uh, well, you met your husband once you moved to your husband now once you moved to Sacramento. How did you guys meet?
We actually met through my friend Jesse, and it was we spent I spent a lot of years initially in Sacramento with Aden as my focus. Um, and I agreed to go out with Rob. And one of the first things that he said to me was, he said that he had split from his wife and he had his kids during the day, and so he was asking if we could meet after 8 when he dropped his kids off, because he didn't want to take any time away from his kids. And that was something that resonated with me as a very foundational value. I didn't want to give up any time with Aden also.
Mm.
So it worked out perfectly. We went to Rick's Diner here in, which is kind of a staple in Old Sacramento, and we had dessert and really hit it off.
You went to what is it called?
It's called Rick's Dessert Diner. It's kind of like a 1950s style diner.
I'm very pleased to say when I was in Sacramento, I happened to be walking and I found that place.
Did you try
They
anything?
like have every kind of dessert. Imagine, oh my
And they
god,
had giant cakes.
giant cakes.
Yeah.
So, so how did you and Rick navigate getting? No, your husband's name isn't Rick. How, how did you and your husband navigate getting to know each other when you had Aiden and he had kids?
We both came from the same value system and had a lot of open conversation, but the kids always came first. And so, as we negotiated vacations, as we negotiated outings, it was always about what the kids wanted to do. One of the more wonderful things about him is that he was a paramedic. And so, nothing faced him. There wasn't any behavior. There wasn't anything where he would just kind of sit back and be like, okay, how should we handle this, or what are we going to do? But there was really never any reaction or like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. Why is this happening? That sort of. So it was really easy and comforting that I had a
Oh,
partner and a companion that felt in it with me.
this is very important. What words of encouragement would you give to a single parent who is looking to find a special someone, but who at the same time is overwhelmed by the daily demands of parenting and work and
I think that you take each day as it comes. And one of the more important things I think that kind of lets everything else fall away is to be present and be present in the moment. So, when it's hard to walk out the door and involve yourself in a date or an activity when you're worried about your kid. And so that wouldn't be the time to do it. You have to find a way to be present in what you're doing and have a little bit of um, that escape, and then also be able to go home refreshed. And it is really, really challenging when I knew someone that it always, services and supports are just a whole other element of life. And she had support scheduled for her son at a day that she was taking a final examination, and the support staff called in sick. And so she has 20 minutes to get to a test. She has no one to be present with her son that had significant medical needs, and just all sorts of chaos. The happy ending to that story is that she reached out to her community of friends, and she got the support for her son, and she was able to make the test. But sometimes you
wow.
do really have to take life, 5 minutes at a time or a day at a time.
Wow. Things can come up very suddenly. How intense going to a final exam and then suddenly surprise, surprise. Wow.
Yeah.
What is Aiden doing these days?
Aiden is very active in our local cosplay community. So he loves to design and create costumes and cosplay with his group of friends. He's working at our local Goodwill. So I'm very excited for that experience. It brings a whole new element to his life of young adulthood, and all the things that come with being a responsible employee, and all the grievances that employees have that go with jobs.
And I mean, well, it's very. Yeah, I remember having my first jobs and how exciting it was to be out in the workforce and getting a paycheck. And
Yeah, and all the things that I think sometimes as just human beings we can overlook or take for granted. It's, how do you navigate when a group of employees is trash talking their boss? You know, is it acceptable to have a white lie when they call you into work because someone else called in sick? All the fun things of employment.
we each are used to navigating life as we navigate life. How would it sounds like Aiden has been so tenacious in overcoming just obstacle after obstacle before him, and really growing into the amazing person he is. How would you describe the distance he has come in his life?
I don't think, if I look back to his 2-year-old self, that the things that he's doing today are things that I only could have hoped for at that time. So it is a complete, I had hopes fulfilled in what I wanted his life to be. And that's as far as having access to community. And with that comes, all the same relationship problems. He fights with his friends. He gets mad. People disappoint him. He disappoints people. Same thing. He's working and gets tired after working an 8-hour shift, or doesn't want to go in 2 days in a row, and all those things. But those are, to me, experiences that we all go through. And that's what I could have hoped for him.
How do you, speaking of balance, how do you strike a balance between being a parent and wanting to protect and help your son figure things out, and letting him experience life himself and make his own mistakes.
In all of this, I found an incredible support system for myself. His social skills group is run by two incredible ladies, that are so gracious in all of the conversations that we have. I have coworkers that I work with now that are really great friends. They're in their 20s. And so we constantly have dialogue over, like, is this a typical 20-year-old experience? What do you think about this?
Mm.
And my husband and the support that my husband offers us every day, I think that it is a lot of, I seek and always have a lot of intentional feedback between, like he's really arguing with a lot of his friends right now. And being open to the conversation of, well, that is something that happens in your early 20s. At what point is it something that we need to step in and support, or how do we help him make his own decisions and have informed choices about some of the things that he's doing, like maybe asking to call off work for 2 weeks. What does that look like? And so I think I have a great support system in being able to bounce those questions off others.
So you're not trying to figure this all out in a vacuum. You're talking to
No,
people. Yeah, yeah. Nice, nice. Oh, and you mentioned
I have
work.
I have great people that really talk me off the ledge of, I want to keep them in a bubble and I want to keep them safe, and that's not the typical human experience that any of us have.
No. And you mentioned work. Recently, you started a new position. Where are you working now?
I'm working with Safe and Home. So Safe and Home is in 18 other states, but they're
Safe and home.
Safe and Home, yeah. They're in 18 different states, but they're new to California.
What kind of service do they provide?
They use assistive technology to offer remote supports, so interaction with human beings via tablet geocoms, those types of assistive tech, um, to provide kind of as needed service 24/7.
So a young adult like your son might use these services
He
sometimes.
he actually is the one that led me into the job. They did a pilot in California last year where our local regional center was looking at introducing assistive technology, and so we had this pilot, and I heard John Decker talking about it, and it got me excited for something that was on the forefront of the disability community and something that can go into the next 20, 30 years of his life.
We briefly, we're running out of time, but what do you love about the service Safe and Home provides?
I love the joy and the excitement that I see in an individual's face when they see the connection and the support person on the other end and understand that they can talk to somebody when they need it, for a variety of reasons. There are things that are something that policy wise we focus on more, but I think so many of our individuals are desperately searching for connection, and looking for conversations and support at times that are not typically offered.
Loneliness obviously is a huge problem in the world just in general, and Safe and Home, it sounds like, really helps people through some loneliness.
Yeah, and I think that it really is supporting independence. It has an innocuous way of offering support. One of the things that my son was more frequently talking about as a young adult is not having support staff in the community with him, because people always end up talking to the support person and excluding him from the conversation.
Mm.
Or he feels like it's identifiable that he has a disability and he doesn't want to be identified that way out in the community. And so being able to access support that he needs and ask questions um, without having it be so visible and apparent.
It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
So this is the website, right?
I'm not saying the,
Oh, safeandhome.com.
yes,
You don't say that better?
I don't.
Huh.
Oh, there it is on the bottom. I see it. I do see it. The black.
Oh, cool. Well, I could talk another hour, but I'm out of time. But thank you for being here, and I always ask my guests this question. I talk and what I do about the power of doing our imperfect best. And what I mean by that is I go for the best I envision for myself in the world. And then when mistakes and obstacles come up, instead of letting them stop me, I try to learn from all that and then move forward towards what I envision. What does doing your imperfect best mean to you, Sarah?
I This is one of the things when we met at the conference that I so appreciate, and I'm going to say one of my favorite phrases is that all of life is a lesson.
Mm.
And that's something that I got from Jesse. My imperfect best is learning from Aden and learning from others around me that have the courage to encounter life, people, places, and situations, um, and be vulnerable and continue to try again despite having outcomes that they don't like or negative things happen, just to continue to get out there and try and do it differently.
Very, very powerful words. Thank you for your time and for sharing the story of, of you and your son and community all working together to create amazing things.
Well, thank you for having me. It was been one of the greatest gifts to meet you and to talk with you a little bit more. I really talking to Kurt at the conference, and then you sending him the video clip of Caitlin and I was spectacular.
Yeah, shout out to Kirk Hinkelman. He's amazing. And Sarah, I'm going to wrap up here, but please stay on the line, okay?
Okay, awesome.
It is funny doing these podcasts. I get so excited. Somehow I start to slow down more and more,
Yeah,
and
lean in.
and thanks for listening and considering and 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 as Caitlin said, all of life is a lesson. What lessons can you learn from Caitlin's stories and Caitlin's experience? And 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 I greatly appreciate that you are watching the podcast and learning from the people I have on, because as I love to say to anyone I'm talking to, you are the best. You are the one and only one of you in the world that's uniquely you. Only you can do what you're doing on this earth exactly as you're doing it. So thank you. Thank you for being you and for expanding into what you can become. And thanks for tuning into the podcast. Tune in next week for another podcast, unless you're watching this like 2,000 years from now. And then you'll probably, in that case, have to watch reruns because I won't be here. Anyway, have an awesome day. Take care and remember to smile. Oh, end recording. Okay.